While Steelshod and the Sons race towards Nahash, I'd like for us to cast our gaze elsewhere. I know, moving away from the action right before it gets good? What the fuck? Don't worry, we'll check back in soon. But for now, let's make our way back to Cadia, specifically Shipbreaker Bay. More specifically, Shipbreaker Bay several months ago. After Steelshod sailed away with Hakon, Terbjornsson was left with a choice. Go after his high priest, or proceed with his mission. We all know which one he chose, and so his fleet set out. The largest Sephardic fleet ever assembled. Far larger than the fleet that so terrified the defenders of Arcadia and led them to send out their navy to die. Primarily longships of various sizes and shapes, but a few Krigar vessels, trading ships taken from Stanmouth's harbor, and several Lorinet cogs. His army is vast. Thousands of Sephardic warriors, hundreds upon hundreds of Bersarks, Krigar hordes, remnants of suborned Middish fodder, and over 1,000 crack troops on loan from Lorraine. Why am I telling you all this? Well, see, he also has champions, and it's through their eyes that we will view the next part of our story. The first is called Unferth, Soulless, a Bersark of incredible strength, speed, and ferocity in battle. Unferth served Gjul the Hungry, nominally, though he was one of the first to closely follow Terbjornsson. Unferth is supremely odd amongst Bersarks, for several reasons. Superficially, he fights differently. He carries a steel-headed poleaxe in one hand, and in his other, he easily hefts a massive tower shield. Essentially a pavus, complete with stakes along the bottom to be stuck upright in the ground, but small enough in his oversized grip to serve as a relatively normal large shield. But Unferth's abnormalities go much deeper. He is a strange, quiet man, and always has been. He fights like a demon, but he fights without anger. In fact, few, if any Svards, have ever seen him angry. In some ways, his actions, his battle lust, all of it would be a lot less unsettling if he were angry. Unferth is gifted with what the Svards call the All-Tongue, a gift from Vlar, the natural ability to quickly and instinctively adopt new tongues as if he were a native speaker. He learned Middish in just a few days, speaks fluent Krigar, Ruskin. Some say Terbjornsson is similarly gifted. Unferth is fond of games of strategy and intellect. He considers himself, foremost, a philosopher. His philosophy is what the Castleans might call reductio ad nihilo, and we would probably just call it nihilism. He sees the natural order of things as the bestial struggle for survival, domination, death, and animal impulses. The strong survive and thrive. The weak perish. Bersarks, to him, represent the closest men have been able to come to the natural, proper state. Rather than speak in a Sephardic accent, the All-Tongue means that his player always speaks in a flat tone, with as little accent as possible, and damn little emotional inflection. It's a deeply creepy tone and style when he does it right, although, done wrong, he sounds exactly like Eeyore. The second champion is not a Svard at all, but a Lorinet. Meet Cyril Thibault Duchamp, an unjumped peasant now part of the Duchamp family and unceasingly loyal to his house. Cyril is an unassuming fellow, older, out of shape, typically dressed in noble's clothes with simple conservative cuts. He carries a dagger, if anything, and wears no armor, but he is, undoubtedly, the most powerful weapon that Lorraine has seen fit to lend the Svards. Cyril is a strategist, one of the very best. He excels at non-standard tactics, over the years winning engagements, utilizing fire, ambush, pit traps, poison, and even an avalanche. He favors unexpected doctrines, unpredictable maneuvers, and keeping his foes guessing. He is extremely good at improvisation and reactive strategy and dirty tricks of every stripe. He's also survived many years of being an unjumped peasant in Lorinet high society, which means he is a competent diplomat and manipulator. Cyril is a married man with responsibilities back home, and a wife that is, in her own way, even more terrifying than he is. But he was loaned to Ter Bjornsson by Duke Baudouin le Dauphin to help ensure a Sephardic victory in Tarathia. He has been set along with a large force of knights led by Sir Isidore Lachance, crossbowmen led by a woman named Cosette Perrot, and their overall commander, Marquis Marchand. Only Marchand and Cyril know that they come with Baudouin's blessing. The rank and file are Marchand's men, to give Lorraine plausible deniability in the event anything goes wrong. So yeah, there you have the villains. Can you guess who's who, based on the bits of their personality you've gleaned? Might be fun to try. When making their characters, I wanted to make sure they were overpowered. So I gave them something like 2 16s or an 18 and a 16, and let them roll for the other 4 stats. Made them something like tier 13 to 15, that range, to make sure they were better than Yoren and Alexander, since I wanted them to have a good shot at taking out the heroes. Unferth and Cyril are on the same ship. Unferth spends the first few days of the journey learning Lorinet, and they pass the time playing chess and discussing whatever crosses their mind. They become, not friends perhaps, as Unferth is a little too unsettling to really befriend. But they are acquaintances, and at least Unferth has enough intellect and language to hold down an interesting conversation in Cyril's mother tongue. The fleet stops in Spitalia, hopscotching several Spitalian ports and hiring as many Spitalian mercs as are willing to fight alongside such an alien army. Ter Bjornsson speaks fluent Spitalian, and he has deep pockets. He manages to contract several large companies and additional ships. Then it's on to Kassala. The weeks grind by slowly as they progress along the coast, but finally the Kassaline coast comes into view. The fleet descends upon the heart of the empire, the city of Kassala itself. The Kassalines saw the fleet coming, of course. A small fleet of Legion-Classis ships had gathered to stop them. They are rapidly crushed. And then the ships begin disembarking along the banks of the Tyre River. Kassala is in decline, but still its empire is large, and its legions are numerous. But they are spread thin around the borders. The garrisons at Kassala itself are tiny compared to the allied Sephardic forces. They mostly consist of Praetorian, legions directly under the Praetor, the Kassaline overgeneral. The Praetorian is dedicated to the defense of the Senate. Despite its name of empire, Kassala has been a republic for the past century or two, ever since Tarathia crushed the empire and ended its line of emperors. Today the Senate rules, though not always very well. Ter Bjornsson delivers his demands to the Senate. His army will pass unmolested. The Kassalines will establish supply lines for him along the road to Tarathia, and as a show of faith, they will grant him half of their garrisoned legions, and half of those they pass between the capital and Nahash. The Sfards set up camp in siege around the city, begin breaking down their ships and using the lumber to craft siege equipment, but it's mostly for show. Within a few days, a message comes from Quintus Lavinius, the Kassaline praetor. He invites Ter Bjornsson to meet that evening and welcomes him to bring an honor guard as befits his station. Ter Bjornsson brings along 50 of his champions and enters the city. Kassala is a sight to behold, a city of contradictions. Grand, beautiful architecture gone to ruin, a university that mostly caters to wealthy foreigners and the elite of the citizenry. A huge library filled with books that only a chosen few will ever read, or even could. A great empire, centuries deep into its decline. Lavinius is a thin, good-looking man, clad in Legion Lorica, flanked by a number of his praetorian. He looks Ter Bjornsson up and down. Abello Sakapos has told me you were once his greatest student, the praetor says. Cyril recognizes the name, one of the greatest living strategists, the architect of the defensive battle Kassala fought against Tarathia 70 years ago, forcing a stalemate after the Serpentes killed the Iron Praetor. Sakopos has also been responsible for much of Kassala's expansion back into Spitalia in the last 60 years, where his armies clashed with those of a Middish Spitalian half-breed named Brutus Varley. Though, some 2 or 3 decades ago, Sakopos retired from the legions and became a teacher at the university, teaching students of war, strategy, and politics. Cyril always wanted to study under the man, but never had the spare funds and time to do so in his youth, and now, at his age, the prospect seemed silly. "Yes," Torbjornsson says flatly, in unaccented Kasseline. "He warned me not to test you," Livinius continues. "That it would only be Kassala's undoing." Torbjornsson simply nods. "So, I believe we can reach a mutually beneficial arrangement," Livinius says. "May we retire and discuss privately?" Torbjornsson agrees, leaving his champions and the Praetorian standing around awkwardly while the 2 men step into a private room. They are alone for some time. Torbjornsson finally emerges, tells his men to move out. Livinius lets them depart without an escort. It is full dark when they leave the city, and Torbjornsson's men light torches. A line of some 50 lights trailing through the city streets. Before they reach the gates, Torbjornsson tells the men to take a different route. The detour takes them to a large Tarathi church. The Tarathi faith has taken root in Kassala, of course. Easily a third or even half the empire's populace now follow Toroth. The church is impressive, grand in scale and well-maintained. Torbjornsson gives the order to burn it down and kill anyone inside. The whole affair doesn't take long. A dozen priests, nuns, and a single old Serpentis knight live on the grounds, and their blood soon paints the church walls. Then, they set the building ablaze. Cyril finds the affair somewhat needlessly provocative, but hardly out of character for Torbjornsson. Surprisingly, no alarm is raised, and they continue on their way out. Torbjornsson leads them through the city. Eventually, they realize they are advancing up a hill to the site of Kassala's great library. Torbjornsson gives the order for his men to form up outside, and toss their torches into and atop the impressive structure, and leave none who emerge alive. Shouts from inside. Librarians and students flee the flames by running out the doors. They are cut down easily. Eventually, the librarians' guardians and caretakers emerge. 5 members of the Knights Serpentes scrambling to arm and armor themselves. Unferth and a few of the Jarl's other champions step forward. Torbjornsson tells them to take 2 alive. These Serpentes have grown a little soft after their years of managing books instead of blades. They put up a good enough fight. One of them even draws blood from Unferth. But soon, they fall, and 2 wounded knights are gathered up and slung over Bersark's shoulders like sacks of flour. After the fighting, Torbjornsson stands motionless, watching the library burn with a blank stare. Shouts can be heard somewhere in the city. Perhaps an alarm, finally. But there appears to be no imminent response to this affront. Finally, he orders them to move out. They find the guards at the gate they entered from to be arrayed against them, barring their exit, but, strangely, lacking much backup or support. It's barely even a fight. They return to the Svartic camp. Torbjornsson gives the order to prepare to leave. He says Kassala should answer his terms by dawn. Thank you for tuning in to Steelshod, a series by Mostly Rights, narrated by Tailforge. You can find every chapter in text format, as well as character sheets, setting information, maps, and rule documents on the Steelshod tabletop system in the link below. If you'd like to support the channel, you can pop down to the description and use the Patreon link for recurring donations, the PayPal.me link for one-time donations, the Teespring link for shirts with the incredibly cool background art by Nobody, or use the DriveThruRPG affiliate link the next time you're looking to try a new system. If you'd like to support the author, you can find Steelshod merch on the MostlyRights.com store, or donate to the Mostly Rights Patreon, which are both linked on reddit.com/r/mostlyrights down below.